Since I adopted minimalist living about 8 years ago, my life has changed in many wonderful ways. But when it comes to minimalism, it hasn't always been easy, and I have certainly made a few mistakes along the way. Hey my friend, welcome back on this kind of dark, rainy autumn day. And today I want to share 12 minimalism mistakes I've made with you. First, to show that no one is perfect and that everyone makes mistakes and that is totally okay. And second, hopefully so that you can avoid making the same mistakes in your minimalism journey. Or if you do recognize some of them in yourself, I am also going to share ways that I found to deal with them better so that hopefully you can do that as well. This video is meant to be fun and inspiring and perhaps relatable to a lot of you. So know that when I say mistake, I am not beating myself up about it, and neither should you if you recognize this in yourself. No one is gonna kick us out of the minimalism club, so take this video how I meant it, in a fun and lighthearted way. The first minimalism mistake that I have made and that I still struggle with sometimes is the old "I might use this someday" feeling. So I mean items that I have no immediate use for, and I also cannot really see myself needing them in the near future, but I still cannot seem to get rid of them because what if I might need them someday, or I will keep a duplicate around in case my regular one breaks. So these items are called just-in-case items, and in a recent poll that I did in my community feed on the channel, it turns out that a lot of you actually struggle with this as well, because our brains are naturally very averse to loss, and we fear letting something go only to find out that we need it later, and then we have to figure out something or we have to go and buy it back. So what I do now that really helps, and what I advise you to do as well if you recognize this, is to flip the script and turn it around. So instead of focusing on what we stand to lose by giving up an item, we focus on what we stand to gain. So we have more space in our drawers and cupboards and closets or wherever the item is being stored. You have less to clean and maintain. There's more breathing room, there's less stress. So the items that we keep around our space continue to cost us things, even if we don't really know it. So we better make sure that these items are actually worth it. So when it comes to just-in-case items, I think this is where frugality on the one hand and minimalism on the other hand start to kind of clash a little bit. Because a frugal person might want to keep something around because it's a waste to get rid of something that is still good and that they might be able to use later. Whereas a minimalist would probably only want to keep it if it is providing real value to them right now. And neither one of these options is better than the other, but it really does help to think about it like this and decide for yourself which is more important to you. The next minimalism mistake I've made is keeping gifts around that I do not think provide me real value anymore, simply because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or just general feeling guilty when it comes to decluttering gifts. Nowadays, most people that know me also know about my minimalist lifestyle, so when someone does give me a gift, which I still appreciate so much, it's usually something consumable like tea or a bottle of whiskey or a gift card or some flowers, and I really like that. So it is, I think the most important thing is prevention and talking about it and communicating so that people know which type of gifts you would like to receive and which type of gifts you don't want to receive anymore. And especially with the holidays coming up, I think this would be an excellent time to start talking about this with people. And then what to do with the gifts that you have received in the past, but you just don't have any use for anymore. And I have come to a place where I am able to let them go, but with a small pang of painful guilt every time I do it. So I will feel bad about it for a few minutes, and then I'll just remind myself that, okay, this is my item now, I am responsible for it, it is my choice what to do with it, and I am not harming anyone if I decide to declutter this, and it is possible to get there. It just takes a lot of practice and perseverance. The way that I have been able to get rid of some of these gifts is by passing them along. So either donating or regifting just makes me feel a lot better than if I were to just throw something in the trash. Something else I've done, and I still continue to do sometimes, is hesitating when it comes to decluttering expensive items. So again, our brains are naturally averse to loss, and getting rid of something that we have paid a lot of money for feels so wrong. It feels like a waste, and we just want to get our money's worth. But let me tell you that keeping an expensive item around is not going to put any money back in your pocket. And in fact, it is continuing to cost you because it takes up space and it takes up energy. And one of my favorite quotes when it comes to minimalism is from the book Goodbye Things, where he says, "Your things are like your roommates, only you pay their rent." So now when I'm decluttering and I'm asking myself all these questions that I do, how much I have paid for something is irrelevant. It doesn't factor into my decision-making process because it doesn't matter. So if you can still sell something, great, do it. And otherwise, it's just bye-bye and I donate it, and I try not to make that same purchasing mistake again in the future. The next minimalism mistake that I have made in the past is buying something new to make myself feel better. And I used to be into retail therapy, and especially in my first few years of minimalism, I still sometimes bought myself something new if I was feeling sad or blue or bored. And I just simply thought, you know what, I did so much decluttering, there is room for something new, so I might as well get myself something new. And I wanted that rush of excitement that comes when you first buy something. This one kind of went away for me gradually, and I think that comes from the experience that I now have, that this doesn't change anything and buying something new is only a temporary solution, and it can quickly lead to overconsumption and kind of getting stuck in this cycle of buying something new every time. And I know that it doesn't solve anything, so what I do now is I go back to my list of self-care activities whenever I feel that I want to cheer myself up. And if you want some inspiration, I actually have a video on it where I list 20 healthy self-care ideas, so I will leave it for you in the description, plus right there. There's a lot more coming up, but first, if you're new here, hi, my name is Vera, and I make videos on this channel about minimalism, intentional living, happiness, and self-care. So if you're not already subscribed, be sure to do so down below for weekly videos like this one. And if you want more from me, you can always join us at patreon.com/simplehappyzen. This is a great way to support the channel, and you will also get access to exclusive videos that are very different from the ones I post here on YouTube. They are more casual, more personal, and we discuss all kinds of things over there that have to do with leading a more simple, happy, and zen life. So you can go to patreon.com/simplehappyzen to sign up. The next minimalism mistake I have made is taking minimalism too far and actually waiting too long to make purchases that have the power to make my days more fun or my work easier or just generally improve my existence and just basically being stingy and frugal on the wrong things. Examples of this are equipment for my work and for making videos, and I waited so long to buy myself a tripod and some lighting equipment, and from the first minute I started using them, I already couldn't figure out how I used to get by without them. They make my work so much easier. Or buying a new bed, which is something that we could have done easily 2 or 3 years before we eventually did, because our old bed was just brutal on our back and neck muscles. It was so old and just used up. So if you recognize this in yourself, know that it is okay to invest in things and make purchases if they have the power to make your life better or easier or smoother, and that these things are definitely worth it, even if you are a minimalist. Similarly, another minimalism mistake I've made, and I actually see this one in the comments from people too, so I know some of you recognize this, is to kind of feel a little bit guilty whenever you do make a purchase or whenever you do decide to keep something around that according to the minimalism rules you shouldn't. Like keeping my stuffed animals around from my childhood, even though I cannot really give you a reason for it other than I just don't want to have to give them up. Or for example, replacing our dining room chairs because the old ones were used up and frankly I just found them really ugly. There's no room in this life for feeling guilty about silly things, and we've talked about this on Patreon as well, and it's just such a useless emotion. So if you recognize this, know that it is okay to do what you feel is right. It's your life, it's your decision, it is your minimalism journey, and minimalism should support you and not weigh you down. So if you want to buy something just because, or if you want to keep something just because, then that is okay too. Minimalism mistake number 7 is thinking, oh, it's not doing anyone any harm here when you are going through your items. And this is something I've definitely thought a number of times when I was sorting through my items and deciding which things I wanted to keep and which things I wanted to get rid of. Like this mixing bowl is just sitting here on that shelf and there is room for it, so it's not doing anyone any harm being there. And of course, it's not actually doing anyone any harm, but it is true that it does take up space and it does add to your belongings. So if you're not using it, why keep it around? So my advice to you, if you recognize this, is to not think about if you have the space to store an item, but only think about if that item actually deserves a place in your life in the future. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't matter if you still have the place to store it, you can still get rid of it. Minimalism mistake I've made number 8 is making impulse buys that I come to regret later. And it's not like I make impulse buys that often anymore. Usually I add something to my wish list, or I'll take a picture in the store, or I'll screenshot it and then I'll think about it for a few days. But sometimes I come across an item and I impulsively decide to buy it and then sometimes end up regretting it. Like last summer, I went to this ethical clothing store and I bought a t-shirt, and actually that wasn't an impulse buy because I had been thinking about that shirt for about a week and I decided to go to the store to actually try it on and see if it would be a good fit for me, which it was, so I bought it. But then I saw this scrunchie. And there was this whole poster next to it with the whole story about these scrunchies and where they were made and how they were made and stuff. And I just thought it was so cute and kind of like 90s and kind of chunky. And it was kind of pricey for a scrunchie. I think it was like 10 euros and I ended up buying it. But what happened was that it is so big and chunky that it pulls on my hair and it kind of gives me a headache. So either I am just not using this, or I am using it and I'm in pain. And it's not like I came to regret every single impulse buy that I've made, but when I think about the purchases that I did end up regretting, a lot of them were impulse buys. So if you recognize this in yourself, then I advise you to use the wish list tip. So take a picture of something, add it to your wish list, think about it for a few days, do some research and see if you still want to go back and get it after a few days. And if I had done that with this scrunchie, I don't think I would have gone back to the store and bought it. Minimalism mistake I have made number 9 is not having systems in place or not having designated places to put things and to store things. And because of that, some items just didn't have a home and they would kind of drift and wander through my place. And a lot of these places, especially surfaces, would end up getting cluttered with a bunch of random things. And now I have systems in place and that works so well. Like we have this little tray that we use to store our phones during the day, and they're always in that tray. So first of all, you know that they won't clutter up our surfaces. And second, they won't distract us during the day because they are all the way across the room. Another example of a great system that we have is about paper clutter. So we collect all our papers in one place, we sort through them once a week, and then we keep the ones that are important and we store them in our folder. And that way, paper all gets collected into one place, which means that it will not clutter up our home. Another minimalism mistake that I've made is buying more furniture to store things and then weirdly filling them up with a bunch of stuff that I didn't really need. It is weird, but the more places we have to store things, the more things we will have to store, and it really works like that. So before you know it, if you buy a new closet or a new shelf, it'll already be filled up with things. So I realized that empty spaces do not need to be filled. And a good example of this is our dining room table. I used to always feel that there needed to be something at the center of our dining room table. And now I just prefer to keep it empty, except when someone hands me flowers, which I always love, and then I will display them there. But otherwise, I'll keep it empty because we both work at that table, we eat at that table, and it's just not practical to have something there that you need to like remove or push around every time you want to use the table. Minimalism mistake number 11 is not decluttering something instantly when I realize that I want to declutter it. And instead, I will just think, okay, I'll get it in the next decluttering round, which is what I do twice a year, but then I don't. Once you notice that an item doesn't add value for you anymore and you want to get rid of it, I find that it's better to do it instantly, because otherwise, if it just sits there in your space, it is easy to kind of be indecisive about it again or forget about it. Or something else you could do is keep a box somewhere in your home that is the to-go box, and then you can fill it up every time you notice an item that you want to get rid of. And once the box is full, you can, for example, drive it to the donation center. Speaking of donation centers, if you are in the middle of decluttering your home and due to the whole world situation, you cannot actually drop them off at the donation centers, I have a video where I talk about how to declutter your home during lockdown that goes specifically into these things. So I will leave it in the description box, plus right there. The last minimalism mistake I've made and I want to share with you is a little bit hard to explain, but I think you might understand where I'm going with this, is to try and force patterns on myself that just are not natural for me, or like little organizational habits that I know I'm never going to be able to keep up long term because they somehow feel weird to me or they do not fit into my daily routines. An example of this is my jewelry, and for the longest time I had this big pile of jewelry on my nightstand that drove both me and my boyfriend crazy, and I just didn't keep it organized because the box that I wanted to use, that I had thought of using to store those things, was all the way across the room, and it was kind of an ugly box and somehow it just didn't work, so I didn't do it. So I changed it around and I got a few small boxes, and I actually also decluttered a bunch of my jewelry. And those smaller boxes I keep in the bottom drawer of my nightstand, and now I actually do keep my jewelry organized, because when I take it off at the end of the day, I am always sitting on my side of the bed next to my nightstand, so it fits into my natural flow and my natural routine. So my advice to you, if you also have these little problem areas like this in your home, to see what it is that is actually not working for you and that doesn't feel natural, and how you can make it feel more natural and make it fit into your patterns and your routines. Now, I would love to hear your minimalism mistakes and also how you eventually overcame them. So any tips that you have to share, please leave them in the comments, because I love reading it, and then we can help each other out. And be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not already, because we've got some really cool stuff coming up in November, December, and January that you are not going to want to miss. If you want tips on how to deal with sentimental clutter, I advise to click right there on that video. And this video is about how to live clutter-free. As always, questions, comments, and conversations down below. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you soon. Bye bye!